Hey everybody, Pastor Steve here. So glad you joined me for today's devotion. We are in the third chapter of the Old Testament book, Ecclesiastes. And while you're opening there, I just want to remind everybody that in 2 Sundays, on Sunday, November 3, we have a guest speaker that day, Kai Bowman, a good friend of mine, who is leading the effort within the Southern Baptist Convention to get our people, to train our people, to encourage our people to pray. And he's going to lead a workshop that afternoon on evangelistic praying, how to pray for people you know who don't know Jesus. I mean, all of us have people we care about who are lost. If they died today, they'd go to hell. How do you pray for them? How do you pray beyond, well, God save so-and-so? So he's going to lead a 1 hour and one and a half hour, 90-minute workshop at 3 o'clock that Sunday afternoon on how to pray evangelistically, how to pray for people who are lost. So you put that on your calendar, 3 o'clock, Sunday, November 3. It's a good Sunday because it's the time change one where you get extra sleep. So you should be feeling really good that afternoon. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. The first several verses probably are among the more well-known verses in the Bible. And in verse 1 where he says, and I'm reading from the New American Standard Translation, there is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under the heavens. I want to talk about that, do a little teaching, then I'll get to the devotional thought. He says, there is an appointed time for everything. The NIV says there's a time for everything. The King James Version says there's a season for everything. And in the Hebrew, it's actually 2 words. The first word that in the New American Standard is translated appointed is the idea of time, appointed time, a definite time. The second word is the Hebrew word for time, times, period, season, circumstances, year, or even years. And then the second part of that verse says there is a time for every event under heaven. And the word translated time there, the NIV says season. Literally, it's interesting. The root word means to delight, pleasure, desire, something you want. And it came to be used for something that was valuable, something that meant a lot to you, something that had purpose. And then event in the NIV is translated as activity. And so what Solomon is saying in that verse, and with the examples he gives in the following verses, and of course, he's already said in chapters 1 and chapter 2, let's set the table. Okay, remember context. You understand the Bible accurately when you remember context. So chapters 1 and chapter 2, he's saying, life is uncertain. Things don't stay the same. Nothing lasts. Things end. There's really nothing new because whatever's going on today has happened in the past and will happen in the future. We're going to die just like, everyone else and the animals and everything. We're all going to die. So, chapter 3, given that, in your lifetime, there are going to be seasons, years, moments, whatever, when you cry and you grieve and you're sad. And then there are going to be seasons when you rejoice and you're glad and you're happy and you celebrate and you laugh. You're going to have all these different kinds of moments in life. Why? Because that's how life is. Now, he is not in this chapter teaching Calvinism or determinism or predestination that God has established there's a set day in your life when something sad is going to happen, and there's a set day in your life God has predetermined when something good is going to happen. That is not what he is teaching in this passage. And I think even the way the New American Standard translates it can make people think that sometimes. What he's saying is there are going to be definite times in your life when you're rejoicing. And there are going to be definite times and definite seasons when you're sad, and you can't pretend one is the other. There's the right moment for sadness, the right moment for joy. Don't pretend there isn't. To get a better idea, look down at verse 11, the first part of it. He says that He, God, has made everything, my Bible translates it, appropriate in its time. Some Bibles will translate it beautiful or fitting. So God has made everything appropriate, everything fitting, everything beautiful in its time. And the word time is the same one used back in verse 1 for seasons, time, period, circumstances, etc. In other words, what he's saying is when life happens in such a way that is time to cry, that's what's appropriate for that season. It's just fitting. It's set that in that season, that's what you do. And when there's times of rejoicing, it's just determined. It's just fitting. It's appropriate. It's set that in those seasons you rejoice. What he's saying is our reaction in the different experiences of life is what is appropriate, is fitting, is set, is fixed for those times. The opposite would be in a time of sorrow, you're laughing, or in a time of celebration, you're crying. So it's this. Don't read this with a Calvinistic, predetermined, predestination blinders on. That's not what he's saying. He's just talking about there are these seasons in your life, and in this season, this is appropriate. In that season, that's appropriate. It's just determined. That's just how life is. That's the point he's making. Now, in the rest of chapter 3, he says, the truth is, we're going to die like all the animals in the world. And just from the basis of outward appearances, if I'm just under the sun, just understanding things from a human perspective, if I don't know anything about that, God has not revealed anything to me. So everything I know is just what I can observe, i.e. science, philosophy. I just look around at life in the world and I analyze it and I try to evaluate it and understand it and draw lessons from it and wisdom and truth. Just from a human perspective, when he's talking about under the sun, it's from the human perspective. So I'm just looking out there, and he says, when I look around, and if I don't know anything because God's not shown me anything, revealed anything, if all I have is my wisdom from what I can observe under the sun, in the end, he said, the animals die and they decay, and we die and we decay. Is there anything more than that? Well, who knows? Because without God letting us know, we don't know. Now, back to verse 11 that I read a moment ago, he goes on in that verse to say that God has also set eternity in their hearts. Being created in the image of God means that God created us for a relationship with Him, and there is just something within the human psyche, within the human soul, the human disposition, that we have this longing. We have the capacity, okay? We have the capacity. A dog doesn't. A fish doesn't. We have the capacity to long for, to want something beyond this life. God put that in our hearts. And so you travel around the world throughout human history, and what do you find? That in practically every culture, there's ideas of eternal life, something beyond the grave. Why? God fixed it, set it, put it in us when He created us. And here's something I want you to think about. You know, and I know more than Solomon knew. Wisest man on the earth, and you and I know more than he knew? Yes. Because we have Jesus. We have the whole Bible and the New Testament. We have more revelation. You see, the only way any of us can know more than what you just observed with your human eyes under the sun, and Solomon is, in the book of Ecclesiastes, says, under the sun, through my observations here, okay? But the only way we can know more than that is because God makes it known. because God reveals it. That's what revelation is. Revelation is God making known what we cannot otherwise know. So how can we know that there's life beyond the grave? God tells us. He reveals it to us. How can we know about heaven? How can we know about a resurrection? How can we know about second coming? We can't know any of that just by human observation of things under the sun. But through divine revelation, we can know more. And thus we know more than Solomon. In theology, we call this progressive revelation, the idea that as time progressed, God revealed more and more. So you know more about what happens after death than Solomon, the wisest man of his era, knew. Because we're not just looking at things through our eyes. What can we comprehend under the sun through our observations? We have that, but we also have the divine revelation of God through Jesus Christ, revealed in His Word and other. And so we know more. Now, devotionally, what this says to me in this chapter, but also combining it with the revelation of Jesus that we have, is that you and I are not just like the animals. Yes, we die and our bodies decay. But Solomon had some sense of it when he talks about our spirit returning to God, but he didn't really know what or understand fully what that meant. We're not an animal. See, science looks at it, and all science can observe is we're the same. We're an organism. We die. We decay. Through revelation, we know that we're not just an animal. I'm not just an animal. And our pets are not on the same level as we are. There's no animal out there that is on the same level as humanity. No matter what anybody out there says, only people are created in the image of God. And when Jesus died, it was for people. And devotionally, my life and your life, we're going to have different seasons. I have had and I will have seasons of rejoicing and celebration and great gladness. I have had and will have seasons of tears and sorrows. And I guess because of the revelation of Christ, I don't allow one season to overshadow the other. In other words, I don't allow the seasons of sorrow to cancel out the seasons of joy. Neither do I allow the seasons of joy to cause me to pretend that the moments of sorrow are not real. There's overlap. They touch each other. But no one season defines my life, because my life, your life, our lives, made up of all of those seasons. They're part of who we are. And how do we live? I keep going back to verse 11, that there's something appropriate, there's something fitting, there's even something beautiful in whatever season I'm in, and that God has put eternity in my heart because there really is an eternity. And that's why we don't grieve as those who have no hope. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. Guess what? That's okay, because we know the one who does know everything. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow as what are we looking at tomorrow? Chapter 4. God bless you, everybody.